Adam Schefter is going to join us here in a little bit to talk about Chris Mortensen. And I think I have my memory on this correctly, Stugotz, because I remember when Adam Schefter was coming up, the landscape at that time was owned by Chris Mortensen. And Chris Mortensen made a very wide berth, a very wide space to help Adam Schefter, to teach Adam Schefter. And I remember watching it on television where Schefter became bigger than Mort as an information insider guy, with the blessing of Mort, because Chris Mortensen was always grateful for the position that he had and graceful about how he shared it with others. It's a notoriously insecure business. It's a notoriously competitive business. And we will talk to Adam Schefter about that. But Roy has put together a montage here to remember Chris Mortensen the way our show remembers him. I will say it again, Chris Mortensen, over a lifetime in journalism, has done big and credible work.
Hello, Mort.
Hello, Stugotz.
How are you? I miss you, buddy. I miss you.
Same here.
Let's talk some football here. Stugotz has been lapsing in and out of withdrawal.
I have. I've missed him, and I'm jonesing for Mort, and I'm tapping my wrist right now. I'm finding a vein, and I'm injecting Chris Mortensen into my vein.
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge one thing. You never wavered on Brett Favre.
Thank you, Mort.
100%.
Thank you, Mort. And you tweeted it out for me to all your Twitter fans.
Now, I know I got to remember to remind people that for everybody who's taking credit for anything,
thank you, Mort.
Only one voice.
Thank you.
Only one voice in the wilderness said 100% and never blink. You're the Favre expert.
Anything you find illuminating or found illuminating or interesting or revelatory about Bill Parcells being introduced this week?
Well, he put me to sleep more than he normally does.
Chris Mortensen with us on 790. The first pick in Chris Mortensen's fantasy food draft is
Buffalo wings.
Excellent choice. Second pick in Chris Mortensen's fantasy food draft is
Guacamole.
Wow.
The third, very high. You took a very high. That's a reach. The third pick in Chris Mortensen's fantasy food draft is
Spring rolls.
He's singing it. He's really enjoying this. It's wacky more. You know, he's been changed ever since he fell down that flight of stairs.
Yeah, so I had knee surgery last Wednesday too. So
that was great, by the way. That commercial is great. You falling down a flight of stairs is really funny. We
had fun.
It was a stunt double, right?
No, come on.
The fourth pick in Chris Mortensen's fantasy food draft is
quesadilla.
And the fifth pick in Chris Mortensen's fantasy food draft, instead of chicken quesadilla, is your shrimp quesadilla or just plain cheese quesadilla?
Cheese quesadilla. Plenty of pico de gallo and what have you, you know?
And the fifth one?
Potato skins.
Let's go to Bill. Bill, you're on with ESPN's Chris Mortensen. Go ahead. Hey, Bill.
Bill got so bored he dropped off.
You're about to break a big story, aren't you, Mort?
Actually, I'm getting one shut down.
You get one shot down, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stories you don't report.
You want to feel free to share any of this on the air with us, Mort? I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, well, if they were true, I still couldn't.
Mike, can you play something to lighten this up, please? Do you have anything to lighten this up?
Mortensen.
I feel like we're interrogating Chris Mortensen. Like, I mean, I don't think this is like a single swinging light bulb of interrogation. It's in a dingy room. Like, I'm about to hit his forehead on the table of a desk.
Mortensen.
Mort, we've been trying to get an answer on this. I'm still not certain we've arrived at any sort of answer. Are the Raiders for real?
Yes, they are for real.
Oh, whoa.
Wow. Big day.
I mean, was that a question?
That's a good reaction from you, Mort. That's the right question. That is the right way to react to that asinine question. Guillermo, put it on the poll. Who's more fundamentally decent?
Wow.
Chris Mortensen or Tim Kirkshin?
Kirkshin is.
Man. I'm not so certain. I don't know. I mean, Mort's on the line now, so I say Mort, but if Kirkshin was on the line, I'd say Kirkshin.
They're both beautiful people.
Let me say this. Here's one way you guys have captured me. I actually go and fill out those polls. I play your poll game. So if that was put up on I'm voting for Kirkshin. I think when you go into a very deep, private, intense battle, personal battle, even though it's really within the confines of yourself, I would say myself, my God, my family, I mean, yeah, you realize that you're on the brink of and my life is life ending here on earth and beginning anew in eternity. That's my faith, as you know. But at the same time, when you're in it, you're really kind of in a fight for, I would say, it's 4 hours at a time a day. And even now, there are instances when that's true. But there were just some things physically that I needed to focus on in handling this cancer disease that so many people in this country are doing, enduring, or succumb to, as I speak.
This is one of the most solid guys we've got around here in terms of journalism, in terms of character, in terms of being a person that people like and respect in this industry where a lot of times we don't like and respect the media. You're not going to hear a lot of folks say anything bad about Chris Mortensen. Put it on the poll, please, Juju at Le Batard Show. Spring rolls, underrated or overrated? Chris Mortensen, Stugotz, I had my own relationship with him. You had your own relationship with him. When I think of him, though, the relationship I think of was the one that he had with my father. He would always go out of his way to call my father. Few people found my father as funny and entertaining as Mort did, and he would call him all the time, even though I'm not totally sure if they ever met. Like, he would call my dad, and I don't think they actually met in person. They may have, but they had a friendship, and you had your own friendship with him.
He was a great man. I was thinking a lot about Mort after the news broke yesterday. The last time I saw him was at the Hall of Fame when Tony Baselli got in, and he gave me a gigantic hug, and I love that man. But Mort, over the 20 years, Dan, because I remember the first segment you did on this show. You kicked me out of the studio. Our owner was in the studio with you with a camera in your face. You were very breathy. But in between those breaths, you said, Stugotz and I have no idea what's going to happen in the NFL, but we'll bring on voices, and they'll tell you what's going to happen in the NFL. And one of those voices for many, many years on a weekly basis was Chris Mortensen. Our audience loved him. But I remember thinking, because Mort was such a big deal back then, and the news breaking stuff became so popular with the audience back then because there was a newness to it, that having Mort on every week, he was one of the building blocks of this radio show. He gave us credibility. He lent us his credibility on a weekly basis because you were right. We have no idea what's going on in the NFL. But Mort did, and it made our show, a little local show in Miami, feel really big and really credible, and I've always been thankful to Mort for that.
There are a couple of things about him, and again, I will tell you that in a little bit we'll talk to Adam Schefter, who had the most personal of relationships with him. But to hear in the outpouring and the grief that beyond credibility, which is something that a whole lot of media people are having a lot of trouble with, and beyond even being able to make all of these special relationships in the league where Peyton Manning and others trust you implicitly. We just talked about Caleb Williams and Draymond Green and contentious attitudes with the media. In some ways, Peter King retiring and Chris Mortensen passing away, these kinds of relationships go with them. Athletes are not going to have these kinds of relationships with future media members, but beyond the credibility in the relationships, what I will tell you is the sheer number of people echoing at every turn, decency and kindness, those two words, it's just not something that you find a whole lot in media members. That combination of things where has the relationships, has the credibility, and also is seen as somebody who is fundamentally kind and decent. Stephen A. Smith and an assortment of other famous people have a ton of relationships, but you just don't hear of many reporters ever in the history of this craft who leave such an indelible mark that people are perpetually talking about feeling his spirituality, that he was obviously somebody who was faith-based and tried to live his life in a way that just sent kindness everywhere. And I don't know about you. Obviously, I've been dealing with an assortment of pains related to grief. But last week, we're mourning the death of Richard Lewis. It seems like mortality is creeping closer and closer around here when, we're back-to-back weeks. We're feeling some of this stuff that makes it a little difficult to, do your normal jovial bullshit stuff that we do around here.
I mean, these were guys that were both Richard Lewis and Chris Mortensen that were on with us. With Mort, it was different. There was a real friendship there. You had it, I had it. It was on air, it was off air. Richard Lewis was more on air. Alan Thicke, I met him once. It was more on air. But these are people who meant a lot to us along the way, meant a lot to our audience as well. I know our audience is feeling today the passing of Chris Mortensen. Mort did local events down here with us. Mort always made time for every single person who showed up to those events. He was just he was a wonderful, kind person.
Play the sound of Al Davis ripping Chris Mortensen, going through the microfiche.
I'm looking for the full press conference. We have so many clips of just the word. I'm looking for the full one.
Okay, Al Davis, the former Raiders owner, when you ask him if the Raiders are for real, Mortensen's answer was, yes, they exist in Oakland. That's all he gave you. But he feuded. I don't even remember. What was the report? It was about Lane Kiffin. It was Al Davis was super mad that Lane Kiffin had done an assortment of things as the coach of the Raiders, and he went up in front of a gathered media with microfiche. Do the young people in the room even know what microfiche is? Do Jessica?
Very small fish. Microfiche.
That's it.
Yeah, right?
That's
Isn't it microfilm?
Fish.
What is
Tiny
fiche?
fish.
I don't know. I called it, I don't know whether it's the brand. I called it when I was in high school. I called it microfiche. But this was Al Davis, who was just ripping Chris Mortensen. And everyone sided with Mortensen because Al Davis was a loon and because the way he said Mortensen was
Mortensen.
funny.
Mortensen.
What is microfiche?
I already told you.
Small fish.
Stu, have you wavered on Brett Favre yet?
I wish.
That is directed at you, Stugotz. Nice thing to say at the eulogy, Billy. As we've mentioned, it's a brutal day for people who cared about Chris Mortensen, and there were a lot of them. He passed away Sunday morning at the age of 72, a legend, a pioneer, and I think Adam Schefter will tell you, because I felt like I saw it happen on television, Adam Schefter was helped by Mort at every turn in a way that didn't seem threatening to Mort, and a lot of people in this business would have been threatened by Adam Schefter, but we'll get his words. Thank you, Adam, for making the time for us. Can you tell us about your relationship with Mort?
Yeah, I mean, it transitioned, Dan, and I appreciate you having me, and my condolences to Mort's wife, Mickey, and his son, Alex, who he loved very much and talked about all the time. But my relationship with Mort was such where when I was at NFL Network and when I was a Denver newspaper guy, I looked at Mort as a legend in the business, somebody that I aspired to be like. There was Will McDonough. There was Mort. They were the ultimate newsmen. And when my contract was coming up at NFL Network, I got a call yesterday from John Walsh, and he said, I want you to know how much Mort went to bat for you and was integral in bringing you to ESPN. I said, I've heard that, John. I know that people have brought that to my attention, that I'm not there without his support, without his recommendation, without his blessing. And he said, no, I'm telling you, like, he went to bat. We got to get this done. And, I always knew it, but it's another thing to hear it again on the day that we lose him. And, he changed the trajectory of my life, just as he changed the trajectory of so many other lives. Go ask Daniel Jeremiah what Mort did for him. Go ask Jeff Darlington what Mort did for him. Go ask so many people around ESPN. And he went from being a legendary newsman in my eyes, one of the greatest reporters in sports history, to becoming a friend, an advisor, somebody that I would lean on, learn from. He was the best. He was the best.
How uncommon is it in this competitive of a business, Adam,
Yeah.
for all of what you said to be so? Because I found it deeply uncommon about him. The fact that everyone is talking about decency and kindness today.
That's the word, decency. That's the word. And yesterday after we lose him, I can't tell you the number of people that reached out that shared their experiences with Mort. And here's the thing about it. They were all incredibly thoughtful like him. They were all remarkably decent like him. And, I get a text yesterday from Chris Ballard, who seemed all emotional, the Colts general manager, about how much Mort supported his son playing football this year. Like nobody would have known that. And Chris was lamenting the fact that his son didn't get to meet Mort in person. Peyton Manning forwarded me 7-8 emails that Mort had sent him through the years, and you just read them. And they're incredible in their thoughtfulness and support and just how much he cared for Peyton and people, not just Peyton. I have those emails. So it's hard. We spoke this week, and the irony is, he actually sounded good to me this week. There was a period during the season where he had pneumonia. We were worried about him, and we were worried about him at that time. And he came back. We have this chain of coworkers, a text chain, and Mort's on it. And our boss, Seth Markman, has pointed out to us how much life that brought to Mort, how much enjoyment, just observations of the football world, the business, the world, whatever it would be. And, when Mort went quiet for a couple of weeks in December, we got concerned. And then he was back to life, so much so that at 7:46 on Saturday night, he was texting with us. And then he's gone Sunday morning. So, it's amazing because it was such a insidious disease that he was fighting, but he really had done pretty well with it. And we thought he was out of the danger zone. And then he went to sleep and just didn't wake up. So, we'll see what the autopsy shows, but I just think he had been through so much physically. And even though he had been doing better, inside, I think he was just, he was beaten up.
Adam, Dan mentioned how uncommon Mort's ability to be able to help and to want to advance people's career is in our industry, and
Yeah.
he is right. And so I'm wondering, were you surprised upon meeting him how willing he was to help you, to promote your career, to eventually make you what you are today, which is the #1 NFL information guy in the industry?
When I got hired there, again, with his support, with his full support, we went to dinner in New York City, Smith and Walensky. And it was the first time that I ever had the chance to sit down with him at length. I had met him before. We had talked before, but, I hadn't had a chance to sit down and talk to him like that. And we talked about our families. We talked about our approach to the job. We talked about life. And he was such a regular guy. And the thing about him, and you guys knew him, he was somebody who in any room would be the single funniest guy in that room. And the guy who also would be the most credible guy in that room. He was the only guy, that could, in the war room on Sunday, go make fun of Boomer. And just mercifully just go at him. And, he had people laughing so many times. He had an unbelievable sense of humor that people, I don't know if they really know. You know, I mentioned in the obituary that we did on ESPN, you know, that Bill Tobin interview that he did with him, he set him up for that great soundbite of Mel Kiper Jr. He knew exactly what was going on. He knew where it was going to go. He kind of asked the question and sat back and got, to me, the greatest soundbite in NFL draft history with Bill Tobin saying, "Who the hell is Mel Kiper?" You know, Mort had that little devilish side to him. He was a very, very funny guy, and yeah, and he was instrumental in the lives of so many different people. Like, yeah, my story is my story, and there'd be 100 other stories of people that Mort helped. So that's just who he was.
You have some experience with grief. I don't know if, you know, this was 2016 that he powered through stage 4 throat cancer. So you've had 10 years of warning that this day might come, right? But there is no real warning, correct, for the thudding finality of what somebody feels on Sunday morning.
No. You know, we were sitting there at breakfast yesterday, or lunch. It was about 12:30. I got a call from my boss, and he told, I was like, I was completely floored, like I was in shock, and my daughter started crying. And it was a very emotional moment at our family table. And like I said to you, he was doing better. He really was. Like, yeah, there were any number of times during the past 8 years or so that we thought he was in danger, that he was gravely ill. But I didn't think I was getting that call yesterday. Like, you know, I just didn't think that I was getting that call. And that's, you know, that's the sad part, aside from all that his family loses, and his wife and son, who were so dependent and loved him so much. But, you know, there wasn't a time to say goodbye, you know, sit with him and share things. Dan, you've talked about your brother eloquently, and you've had time to sit with him in his final weeks and days, right? And even though we had chances to tell Mort how much we loved him and appreciated him, you know, we didn't know the end was coming yesterday. That surprised everybody, including his own family. So, just very sudden. And, you know, there's no way that it's ever going to be nice, whether it's a long drawn out process or whether it's quick and sudden. But that's the way it went yesterday. And, you know,
you knew him very, very closely, so I don't know if this is a dumb question to ask you. I have a hard time imagining him angry. I just have a hard time imagining it. Did you see him angry very often?
Yeah, not very often, but I've seen him angry, and I'm trying to think of exactly when it was. You know, I think he obviously mellowed over the years. He talked about, I think, having a temper, you know, when he was younger. And I said this to, who was I talking to? Somebody. And, you know, it's amazing to me. When I got hired at ESPN, when Mort signed off on that, blessed it, recommended it, he at that time was 57 years old. And I'm 57 now. And so I understand at that point where he was and what he would have looked to have done and accomplish. And so that anger, that temper, I think it dissipated over time. And I'll just say this, like, there may have been a couple of things that I had seen temper wise, but when I was the guy who was wound up or stressed or just really tight over a story or something we had coming up, I mean, he was always the guy that could deflate some of that tension from me. And I don't think there's anybody that could do that other than him. Only him. You know, he was the guy that could make you laugh at the most stressful moments, you know, like it was just him. I wish we had the clip. I can remember when we were going through the Richie Incognito Bullygate scenario. And that morning, you know, we came out of the report and Richie started coming at me on social media. And, you know, Mort, you know, was a little bigger than me, you know, gets on TV and he's like, you know, Richie Incognito said, bring it. You know, Mort gets on TV like a big brother. He's like, you want us to bring it, Richie? You come with me. And that was Mort stepping in as a big brother to defend his little brother who was being picked on. You know, that was Mort.
What will you miss most about Mort, Adam?
Everything. Just who he was, the man he was, the decency he had, what he meant to his family, what he meant to his friends, the humor, the laughs, the memories, all of it. I don't know how you sum up a life well lived like that, but you know, that was somebody, you know, like I said, we spoke this past week for 15, 20 minutes, Tuesday or Wednesday. I invited him, you know, there was a function going on on the East Coast. And I said, why don't you come stay at my house this June? And he said, you know, I can't even think about June right now. We'll talk about it when I get there. He's like, okay, you got it, Mort, but I'd love for you to stay here. You know, I'd love for you to come spend the weekend and hang out. And I guess that was affirmation that he knew that he wasn't counting on any time, even if he was in my mind doing better. So that's kind of where he's at. When you ask me what I'll remember about him, I'll remember how much I loved him and how much he meant to me and how much he meant to so many people.
How moved were you by the outpouring yesterday? Because it was nice to hear everyone have consensus of opinion on how it is they were touched by him. It turned it into truth for people who may not have known him to hear it from so many different places.
Yeah, well, this is not to diminish him. I mean, that's what happens when somebody, you know, passes a lot of times. But with him, all of it was real and all of it was true. You know, a lot of times when people talk about what a great person. Okay, yeah. And many times it's right. But, you know, with him, it was all true. And then some. It was all true. That's how great he was.
Adam, thank you for making the time. We won't bother you with any of the mundane football questions you're used to getting this time of year. Heartbroken on your behalf and broken in general. Thank you for being on with us.
Thank you, guys. Adam. I appreciate having me and allowing us to celebrate Mort a little bit here.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.